I'll introduce the three speakers to make their way up speedily to the front, and they'll engage and interact with us on a one-on-one basis before moving into some signing of very important documentation that will take place shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome to the front of the stage the following three speakers: Mr. Jens Papowitz, who is from B. Braun, a company that produces medical devices. He'll be followed on stage by Mr. Steve BINNIE from SAPPI, the South African Paper and Pulp Company. And our third speaker following that will be Mr. Chotia from Discovery, a South African insurance and banking firm, all three of which have very significant pronouncements to make here in South Africa and commitments that they'll engage us on. A warm welcome, firstly, Mr. Papowitz. A warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Jens Papowitz. I'm representing a German 100% family-owned business, B. Braun Medical. We are globally one of the leaders in medical devices and liquid pharmaceuticals. And I don't know, Mr. President, whether you still remember me at last year's conference on a Saturday morning in Soweto at the tour that you had championed. I approached you and I told you, next year, we will also join the ranks of investors, and we kept our promise. A few weeks after the investment summit, we broke ground here in Johannesburg for a new 300 million greenfield pharmaceutical plant integrated for multiple products. And actually, the factory is quite high up. We will go online most likely next year, early next year. This pharmaceutical plant will generate 100 direct jobs and will create significant opportunities for export. But I think what is potentially even more important in this current economy, about 80% of all our content in this plant is sourced locally, built locally. We have a wonderful team of ambitious young local architects. We have a very competent network of project partners and experienced local suppliers. And although building up a relatively complex plant in a regulated industry can be quite a challenge, I can tell you, for all those of you who are considering investments, it is mostly fun and it has been an enjoyable ride. And I think what our project proves is we can do this here in this country better together. Thank you.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of SAPPI, it's a great honor to be here once again at the South African Investment Conference. Last year, SAPPI committed 7.7 billion at our plant in Umkomaas in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm very pleased to say that we've made great progress. We're 40% complete on that project, and we expect to finish in September 2020. This year, once again, we want to make commitments, and over the next 5 years, SAPPI is going to commit a further 14 billion across our 4 plants in South Africa. SAPPI represents 1% of export revenue for South Africa, and these investments will allow us to grow further. I think it's very important to recognize that the 4 plants that I referred to are located in KwaZulu-Natal and in Mpumalanga. And we all know that those are regions which are going through some tough economic times, and these will be a significant boost to those local economies with regards to job creation, procurement opportunities, skills development. SAPPI is proudly South African. We have operations all over the world, in Europe and in North America, but we're proud to be headquartered in South Africa. And this is where we have great opportunities, and we're very proud to be here today. So thank you very much.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Discovery, I'm very privileged to be standing here this morning announcing to you that Discovery is truly committed to South Africa and being proudly South African. We are honored to be creating the world's first behavioral bank, which is going to be fully digital, and we'll continue to invest in establishing our businesses across all the different sectors within financial services and healthcare. So in building the bank, we are very proud to announce that we've already spent approximately 6.5 billion rands in launching the bank, and we're committing a further 500 million rands over the next 3 to 5 years in taking this bank to become fully digital and operational. In addition to that, we see the health sector as being key in this market, and we continue to develop systems and technology to make healthcare more efficient and more affordable and more accessible to the people of South Africa. And in that regard, we're spending 800 million rands over the next 3 years in improving technologies, in improving systems, and making healthcare more efficient and affordable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the various representatives of these companies for joining us to give us some insight into the advanced commitments that they're making. But I think I'm not too impressed as a South African with the celebrations that have taken place this far. This is money we're talking about, real hard-earned capital, which is going to make a societal difference in this particular country and continent. So can we celebrate that one more time? There we go. Now that you've set the standard, ladies and gentlemen, and honored guests, we need to maintain that throughout the next announcements that we'll be following up. With that said, there's some important paperwork that needs to be signed, and I understand the documents are prepared, the pens are in hand, and of course, additional speakers will be making their way to the front of the stage to join us here. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Mr. Norio Maruyama, the ambassador of Japan to South Africa. He'll be joined by Mr. Toru Namath, who is the executive vice president for Isuzu Motors, Mr. Yasuhiro Doida, who is the CEO of Mitsubishi Africa. And I'd like to warmly welcome to the front as well to join them in signing several of these documents, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, the Minister of Trade and Industry in South Africa, followed by the President, who has joined us on stage to also participate, including Minister Pandor, to join us in signing these key documentations which stand to show and demonstrate the relationship between the Japan-SA Business Forum. And this is a signing ceremony which really speaks to the developments and advancements that have been made. No need to be shy. To both the ministers as well as our representatives, please do make your way to the front table that is present here today. Minister Patel, I hope you've got the interesting documentation in your breast pocket to take out and establish here today as the signatories as well as the signing of this documentation will take place. To our international guests, please make your way to the table, join the ministers as well as the President in signing this documentation. As they continue to make their way to the table, ladies and gentlemen, to share some insight as to what this commitment really stands across, it is the establishment as well as enhancing the partnerships between the Japan-South Africa Business Forum. Now, this will strive to bring South Africa and Japan closer together and to identify and unlock trade and investment opportunities between the two countries. It will serve as a mechanism to identify key interventions that can unlock new opportunities between South Africa and Japan. At last year's investment conference, Japanese companies made investment commitments amounting to 6.8 billion rand, helping to build productive capacity and support foreign direct investment coming into South Africa. This is a significant milestone here, ladies and gentlemen, and really speaks to the ongoing partnership that we see. Not only do we look for trade and investment opportunities between these two nations, but we occasionally visit each other, and as the President mentioned earlier, perhaps host award-winning and, of course, world champions in some of these regions too. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as the signing of the Japan-South Africa Business Forum takes place. Following this, Ambassador Maruyama will join us at the podium to give us some feedback and insight into this ongoing partnership and exactly why Japan and South Africa will continue to forge ahead, not only in business, but maybe even in sport and ongoing further partnerships that we look to establish. A round of applause once more. Ambassador Maruyama, please take to the podium to share your words.
His Excellency President Ramaphosa, Honorable Minister Patel, Honorable Mr. Pando, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to celebrate the launching of the Business Council between Japan and South Africa. Your Excellency, you visit 3 times Japan this year, and I realize that you never leave Japan with your empty hands. And I understand. Last time, several days ago, he just stayed 2 nights in Japan, in Yokohama, and he brought back with a big golden trophy. Congratulations again, Mr. President. The launching of a business council is the achievement, one of the achievements of his second visit when Japan held a Tokyo International Conference on African Development in August, Ticket 7. At that time, Your Excellency, you carefully listened to the words of the potential Japanese investors, and you identify one important thing for them, important needs, which is predictability. This council gives a lot of importance of the regular basis discussions involving both government and both private sector, thus doing the predictability more important. I'm quite sure that my colleagues here will appreciate this opportunity to be able to set up in the local basis a business council that can bring more predictability for the investment opportunities in South Africa. So I'm so glad today and so honored today to be able to sign with Honorable Mr. Patel, who will be a co-chair for the Business Council with me to have this opportunity. Japan committed, Japanese government and Japanese private sector committed at the occasion, Ticket 7, that we will invest more than 20 billion of US dollar over 3 years in all the continent of Africa, but having this important tool, and as ambassador of Japan here to South Africa, I would like to see a substantial part of this commitment coming here to South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our guests, as well as the commitment that they've made, certainly expanding on our partnership in South Africa. A big thank you as they make their way off stage to the ministers, as well as the ambassador of Japan to South Africa and our investing companies. Thank you once more as they make their way off stage, celebrating the advancement of ongoing partnerships between these 2 economies. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. While we look to keep with the momentum that has been established, and as was highlighted just yesterday with the President turning the soil in the city of Tshwane with regard to ongoing developments within South Africa's automotive sector, I'd like to introduce 3 more speakers to give us some insight regarding the commitments that their institutions look to make in South Africa, particularly in the automotive industry space. Our next 3 speakers, ladies and gentlemen, who will join us at the podium shortly to give us some insight into their commitments. I'd like to invite Mr. Tim ABBOTT, the MD of BMW South Africa, to come forward and announce the Automotive Transformation Fund, an initiative of the Department of Trade and Industry and Santon, together with NAMSA. He'll be followed by Mr. Andrew KIRBY, the Managing Director of Toyota South Africa, an automotive manufacturer in the country, to come forward, as well as Mr. Gibson Njenje. He's the Managing Director of VM Automotive, an automotive components company and manufacturer in South Africa. A warm welcome to these 3 speakers as they make their way forward and give us some insight into the commitments that they make back to back.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, Mr. President, as a very humble Englishman, can I just say congratulations on a magnificent win for the Springboks on Saturday. I did watch the game with South African friends with a braai, so I'm now converted. I'm now leaving Brexit well behind and staying in South Africa. After 2 years of close collaboration between the automotive industry and government, and a special welcome for Lionel October and the DTI team, I stand here on behalf of my fellow OEMs within the automotive industry to announce the establishment of the Automotive Industry Fund. This is on top of the 40 billion rand we've already pledged across the industry. This is a further 6 billion rand 10-year fund designed to support and accelerate the participation of black and historically disadvantaged people and companies in the automotive industry supply chain. Now, this is in support of the SA Automotive Master Plan that takes that to 2035. The fund's mission will be to accelerate the empowerment of black South Africans within the auto sector, upskilling of black employees, wannabe auto entrepreneurs, expansion of black-owned dealerships and authorised repair centres, substantially increase the contribution of black-owned automotive component manufacturers within the supply chain. And most importantly, to really enable young black female South Africans to work within our industry. This will result in more jobs, growth in South Africa, and obviously transformation. I've been in the automotive industry a long time, as you can see, but I've worked all the way around the world, but I've never seen the collaboration of competing brands coming together so successfully here in South Africa to transform this country, to grow our local content, and I'm very, very proud to represent this industry here and for the whole of the automotive industry for South Africa. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I had the privilege also to be in Japan this last weekend and enjoy the euphoria of our win at the Rugby World Cup. But I was really taken by the tremendous goodwill of the Japanese people towards our team and of course towards South Africa as well. I hosted one of our senior executives at the game, and he said to me afterwards that he could really understand, as he put it, the fighting spirit of the rugby team that got them through to the finals, but also of South Africans and also of Toyota South Africa, to be able to get approval for a foreign direct investment in South Africa at a time when the global motor industry is going through some very, very tough changes, and of course the South African economy as well. So I'm very pleased that to be able to represent a Japanese company today and announce a foreign direct investment and to be able to demonstrate that fighting spirit, to get that approval, to grow our business in South Africa, and of course to increase our contribution in the country as well. A little bit of background, Toyota South Africa has been producing quality vehicles for South Africans and international customers for about 58 years. And in line with that, over the last 10 years, we've invested over 12 billion rand in supply tooling, manufacturing, equipment, and our dealer network. So I'm pleased that today I can announce a continuation of that journey of investing in South Africa. Globally, the automotive industry is going through some profound changes, and that's certainly been felt here in South Africa. In 2016, we had to make the decision not to continue with the production of the very popular Corolla model in 2020. And so I'm very pleased that after 3 years of study, we have been able to get approval for the investment of over 2.4 billion rand in the production of a new passenger car model at our Durban factory from the end of 2021. I'm also very pleased that this production will include, for the first time on the African continent, the production of the Toyota hybrid Synergy drive vehicle as well. That will be good for meeting the future needs. Of course, the investment, we aim to bring smiles to our customers, but also to engage the passion and the talents of our over 8,000 employees in South Africa, and also to include those numerous family members of the extended family of suppliers, distributors, dealers, as well as supplier partners. The investment will generate an additional economic activity in South Africa of 2.85 billion rand per annum. And it will generate an additional 1,500 new jobs. So overall, of Of course, I want to emphasize that this wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the very stable and secure future we have with industrial policy in South Africa and the new APDP Phase 2. And I really want to thank all the key role players, especially the DTIC, Mr. Patel, who's leading that charge in rolling out and paving the way for us to implement the new policy regime at the beginning of 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kirby.
Mr. President, dear fellow delegates, mine is a testimonial to a working relationship between the overseas exporting manufacturers, the government in the form of financial IDC, and ourselves as small business people. I represent a company, my name is Gibson Njenje. I represent a company called VM Automotive. This is a company that was established in 2013 when I was not called to work for government. And it's a 100% triple BEE company, level 1. And we also have a woman representation on our shareholders and boards. VM was established in 2013, as I say, but it only broke through into business in 2018, beginning of 2018. Thanks to support from Mercedes-Benz South Africa and the IDC. We worked throughout that process of 5 years without any contract in hand. And all we had to do was to think how best we're going to break into this difficult industry, the automotives. We started off as a tier 2 company last year, and having bought a plant that does what is called blanking of the body parts of the car, the skin of the car, the interior and the exterior. We bought this plant in Roslyn as an operating entity, and it is currently supplying to both BMW and Mercedes-Benz. We, in 2019 April, were awarded a new contract by Mercedes-Benz for their new C-Class, which is called W206. We are, since July 2019, building a plant in East London, Berlin, a economically depressed area, Mr. President, and of course, close to our clients. The plant that we're building and equipment that we've ordered from Europe for our blanking line in East London will cost the shareholders of VM Automotive and IDC over 400 million rand. And this plant that we started in July to build will be finished in April 2020. We then expect equipment to come through from Europe for the blanking line, and the machine will be on site in about April 2020. We currently are employing over 110 people at the building site. And we hope when we open the plant in 2020, about September, we will have additionally 51 people who will be new employees in the East London area. The plant that we're establishing in East London is called a high-speed laser blanking line. And it is the first of its kind in Africa. Because of the speed with which it cuts these parts, which the automotive industry requires, we are now in a position to also offer to other OEMs like Toyota and Nissan, VW, and deal with them on a first-tier level that we supply directly to them without having to be a subcontractor to somebody. We're looking also forward to strong support as we have received from the IDC, as well as the DTI. We thank you.
And you can go ahead and acknowledge the President. Significant commitments that have been made by multiple companies within the automotive space, ladies and gentlemen. Please offer a round of applause to the various companies represented: VM, Automobile Parts, BMW, South Africa, and of course Toyota, all making big strides within South Africa's environment to build up on the job creation opportunities. I'd like to bring on and call on the next three speakers who will give us some insight into the various elements and levels of participation that they are driving in South Africa's economy. Mr. Rolf Meyer from Public-Private Growth Initiative to announce the establishment of the Agricultural Development Agency, followed by Mr. Stefano Maratti of Renogen to tell us more about the LNG and helium project within the Free State Province, followed by Mr. Leslie MAASDORP, the Vice President of the New Development Bank, a multilateral BRICS bank, to tell us more about some of the commitments that will be made from this DFI institution to drive ongoing growth in South Africa. A warm welcome to all of them, ladies and gentlemen, as they make their way to the podium.
Mr. President, after all the glory of the weekend, a few of us have decided to make a proposal to the selectors of the national team, and that is that you be selected as an honorary Springbok. Mr. President, I'm not a farmer, as you know, but I'm here to speak about the formation of the Agricultural Development Agency, which has been approved by Minister Toko Didiza and with the support of Minister Ebrahim Patel, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. It will be launched hopefully by January next year. But in the meantime, we have succeeded in bringing together already commitments by 32 participants, in other words, 32 projects that will translate into 12.9 billion rand over the next 5 years in investments in agriculture. The beauty about this, Mr. President, is that it's actually translating into huge opportunities for people who have not farmed before, including subsistence farmers as well as major commercial enterprises. And it will benefit, at least in our calculation at this stage, it will benefit at least 450,000 people in rural communities in all 9 provinces. It will furthermore create job opportunities for the potential of 300,000 people. Like I said, subsistence farmers as well as those people very closely connected in rural areas to them. So that is the announcement that we would like to make.
Mr. President, Honourable Minister, and esteemed guests, it is indeed an absolute privilege to be standing here and to be making this commitment today. I won't mention the rugby everyone else has, but go Bokke. Taking on from something that the Honourable Minister mentioned a little earlier in terms of South Africa's rich geological history and the cradle of humankind, I need to set the scene to what happened in this country. So wind the clock back around 2 billion years, and the country was blessed with the largest asteroid ever to have hit the planet. It's this asteroid that endowed South Africa with the majority of its mineral wealth, and that's what's driving the nation forward at the moment. It also laid the foundation for the development of arguably the world's most unique natural gas field. And Renogen now is proud to be the sole holder of an onshore petroleum production right awarded by the DMR and PASA. The field is unique in the sense that the gas comes from bacteria, which means that it's a completely renewable resource. This is something that has never been seen before, where you drill for gas and the gas just keeps flowing because bacteria produces it. It's also unique because it contains an incredibly important element called helium, which is not just important for balloons. It's important for rocket launchers, manufacture of cell phones, TVs, any kind of high-end equipment, MRIs. It's really at the very cutting edge of technology. Now, where the rest of the world enjoys concentrations of 0.1 to 0.3%, our last well clocked in at 11%, thanks to this asteroid. It's such an important element that the United States government declared helium the second most critical element to US national security. That then led to Renogen receiving a loan from the US government for $40 million or 600 million rand, which combined with our recent dual listing on the Australian Stock Exchange brings in a total of 700 million rand of foreign direct investment into South Africa to make sure that this critical element comes online in 2021. Not only creating over 100 cumulative jobs over the next 2 years, but also setting the scene as the very first producer of LNG in South Africa onshore for commercial purposes. This will lay the foundation for South Africa's entry into a domestic onshore LNG economy. We're pledging today to invest 750 million rand into this project and into South Africa. Thank you.
Mr. President, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to pledge and make commitments on behalf of the New Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank as we are known, for 2020. Before I talk about 2020, Mr. President, it might be useful to reflect on what we committed last year. You will recall that since our capital is in US dollars, we pledged $2 billion for 2019, and I'm pleased to say that we have already reached the $2 billion mark for loan approvals in South Africa by October, so we are likely to exceed that number by the end of this year. We will probably reach between $2.2 and $2.3 billion. That is for 2019. With respect to 2020, Mr. President, I have the mandate from the President of the Bank, who unfortunately could not be here today, that for 2020 the bank will pledge $1.6 billion as a minimum target for infrastructure investments for next year. We hope to still reach the $2 billion target because there's something magical about a round number, and I'm sure you will mention that to me and to him. But $1.6 billion is what we have in the pipeline right now for 2020. Let me also just highlight two other elements. One, our investments are in a number of key sectors that will contribute to the resuscitation of economic growth in South Africa. These sectors are energy, firstly, specifically renewable energy. Secondly, a big focus on transport, upgrading of ports, the roads network. We, for example, have a very large exposure, a program loan to Sunrail to the tune of 7 billion rand that we've just approved. And then finally, water, as you know, is a very scarce resource in South Africa. We have a significant project with DCTA that we have approved for the Lesotho Highlands Water Project Phase 2 in Lesotho. And then finally, I'd like to highlight, Mr. President, we will also in 2020 begin a program of raising capital in the debt markets in South Africa. We have a 10 billion rand bond program and inward listing on the JSE that have been approved by regulators. So we will be tapping into institutional money in the domestic market, using our very high credit quality as a AA rated institution to diversify and offer new opportunities for asset managers to buy into the New Development Bank's paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much to each of our speakers who have given us firm commitments that they're making to South Africa's economy. If you thought that that was it, believe me, there's more. As the President mentioned earlier, we have a big stage for a reason, and that's because there are ongoing commitments that will be made. We are cognizant that we are running slightly late, but to our next two speakers who will join us, advancing on some of the investments that we require from an infrastructure development point of view, as well as the fourth industrial revolution and the technology age that we live in. Our next two speakers, Mr. MOHAMMEDY, the Acting Group Chief Executive of TRANSNET, the South African state-owned freight logistics group managing ports as well as rail infrastructure, introduction. He'll also be followed by the Group CEO of MTN, a Pan-African mobile telecommunications service provider with South African roots. If both speakers could please join us very promptly on stage to give us some of their feedback and ongoing investment commitments. A warm welcome to them, please.
Good morning, Honorable President, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. TRANSNET, as you know, is the owner and operator of the rail, port, and pipeline infrastructure in South Africa. In the last 7 years, we have committed and have spent just over 190 billion rand in infrastructure projects across the country. For the coming 3 to 5 years, we commit a further 22.6 billion rand in projects that have already been approved, particularly in the Uferval area to expand our key projects that relate to certain key commodities that move in the eastern corridor of the country. The Port of Durban is looking to receive investment just over 7 billion rand in the berths at the container terminal, as well as across the port's infrastructure. We're looking to invest in just over 1 billion rand in key port equipment that is absolutely critical to ensure that our customers receive the requisite service that TRANSNET has promised to deliver. The rail expansion in the Waterberg region has already commenced. Phase 1 and 2 have already been committed, and we have committed 4.5 billion rand in investing in that particular region for the domestic and export coal markets. As far as the Cape Town container terminal, we are looking to expand capacity from the current 800,000 TEUs to over 1 million TEUs at a cost of just over 2.8 billion rand. You will also know that at the iron ore expansion line, we have put in 3.1 billion rand in terms of additional infrastructure that is required at the ports, and that process has already commenced, and we expect that project to be concluded towards the end of 2020. At the Port of Richards Bay, key infrastructure and equipment projects are already underway to deliver at least 1.2 billion rand in investments. These projects in cumulative value will generate significant growth in the gross domestic product of our country, and in addition will deliver approximately 20,000 jobs in the direct jobs and approximately 25,000 indirect jobs for our people across the various parts of our country. TRANSNET remains committed to assisting to drive economic growth in the South African context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the Acting Group CEO of TRANSNET, and of course the final speaker that comes up on stage. Notice the wardrobe attire as you continue to ululate and applaud Mr. Rob Shooter of MTN Group.
No more applause for the Springboks. Honorable President, dignitaries, ministers, welcome. In 2017, MTN was asked to consider sponsoring the national rugby team. And it was a difficult time, I think, for the Springboks, also a difficult time for MTN. But we had faith. We felt they could do it. We didn't know exactly how, and we are just so proud of what they've achieved in the World Cup and the small role that we were able to play. So, of course, it broke my heart that I couldn't see the MTN on the jersey when they were in Japan, so there it is for this morning. Perhaps in a similar way, we are absolute believers that South Africa is going to rise and prosper in the years ahead and overcome all the challenges and difficulties we've had these last few years. And I think, again, we don't exactly know how, but we are believers. And so we are announcing today that over the next 5 years in South Africa, MTN will be spending 10 billion rand per year on capital investment. This will be largely in the MTN South African OpCo, and the main focus there is rolling out the digital infrastructure, the networks, the connectivity, the high-speed highways that South Africa is going to need to move even further into the digital age. And a second portion is the capital investment we put into MTN Group, where we are building properties, investments, platforms, and systems, employing people that we then use across the 21 countries in which we operate and the 244 million customers that we serve across Africa and the Middle East. So we're really pleased to be able to stand up and make that commitment today, and we look forward to watching it develop and watching the national team develop as well. Thank you.
Once again, some significant commitments made in a variety of industries and sectors that we do see in South Africa, and of course expanding on some of those developments that have been made already. I would throw a sharp one to Mr. Shooter and ask, when exactly are those data prices decreasing in order to advance levels of connectivity that we see in South Africa? Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to celebrate some of those conversations, I would like to warmly welcome and call upon several additional speakers who will be participating in the signing ceremony of the Clothing, Textile, Footwear and Leather Master Plan for a very important sector within South Africa's economy. Dates back to being a significant employer of a number of individuals within South Africa's economy and a great contributor as well to economic growth. To help us sign this particular partnership, ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome on stage the following speakers who will make their way speedily up and gather at the first table. Mr. Anthony Thunstrom, the CEO of the Foschini Group and incoming chair of the National Clothing Retail Federation, followed by the CEO of Pepkor, Mr. Leon Lawrence, the CEO of Edcon, Mr. Grant Patterson, Ms. Natasha Ambrosio, the Head of Sustainable Value Chain at Mr. Price Group, followed by Ms. Lulu Kumalo, Head of Corporate Affairs at Woolworths, Mr. Graham Choice, representing the South African Apparel Association, Mr. Jikra Viemtel, and Mr. John Comley, representing the Southern Africa Footwear and Leather Industries Association, Mr. Raj Shunnamgam, who's representing the Apparel Manufacturers of South Africa, followed by Mr. Herman Pillay and Mr. Ranjan Naika, representing the Apparel and Textile Association of South Africa. The next two speakers as well, Mr. Brink, representing the Textile Federation of South Africa, Mr. Andre Kriel, who's the General Secretary of the South African Clothing and Textile and Workers Union, Mr. Themba Khumalo, President of the Southern Africa Clothing and Textile Workers Union, Mr. Ashley Benjamin, the General Secretary of the National Union of Leather and Allied Workers Union, and representing government, Minister Ibrahim Patel, Minister of Trade and Industry. Please warmly welcome all of these key participants and stakeholders within South Africa's clothing, manufacturing and textiles industry, who will be signing a key commitment and master plan to continue to grow the advancement and development of the CTFL sector. To give you more insight on this particular partnership as we continue to see their signatures being placed on this very important piece of documentation, the CTFL Master Plan has been developed together with business, labor and government in the spirit of partnership and renewal. Each of South Africa's major retailers in the sector have committed to increase procurement of CTFL goods from Southern African manufacturers over the next decade. This will increase in procurement of locally manufactured goods from 44% today, as it stands, to 65% by the year 2030. To support this growth in local procurement, manufacturers, workers, and government will each support the investment in local values, adaptable work arrangements, and a clampdown on illegal imports and trade. These commitments are expected to grow employment across the retail and manufacturing value chains for CTFL by 120,000 jobs by the year 2030, with more than 70,000 of these jobs expected to come from the manufacturing sector alone. The master plan is already bearing fruit. Retailers have already committed in the first half of implementation to procure an additional 85 million units of clothing and footwear from local manufacturers that will create 28,000 new jobs. To deliver on this, manufacturing companies represented here today are committing 6.8 billion rand in fresh investment over the next 5 years, and organized labor has agreed to promote adaptability within a decent work framework. Ladies and gentlemen, a significant number that has been announced, retailers as well, who are making a concerted effort, which does speak to how we as South African shoppers will continue to interact with the products and tools that we receive. A significant contribution. Please recognize this with the applause and, of course, celebration that it certainly does deserve as the delegates continue to sign and participate in a picture opportunity with His Excellency. A huge round of acknowledgement for this capital and boost to job creation in South Africa. I heard some ululating, but I'm not too impressed. I think it could be a little bit louder from that corner. There we go. Please do gather in the center. We've got a wonderful crowd of members of the media who are ready and eager to actually witness this particular contribution being made by both government, members of the private sector, and of course, labor representatives as well. Please do gather in the center of the stage in order to witness this occasion and of course participate in a picture opportunity with the President of the Republic of South Africa. Do stay behind. There's a photo opportunity with the President for all of the delegates who are present here today. Keywords that are being mentioned there by the President, time for implementation. Thank you very much to the various participants as they make their way off stage, having participated in this important occasion to actually sign the CTFL agreement, which speaks to the Clothing, Footwear, Leather Materials and Textiles Association of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition, we've got another group of signatories that will be taking place, and this time also looking at some of the additional commitments that have been made by many of these institutions. As I call the respective speakers up, we'd like the President to remain on stage as these following speakers and representatives of institutions make their way. I'd like to call on Mr. Haroon Kala of PharmaQ, who will be investing 150 million rand in South Africa, Mr. Jerry Liu of Hisense, who will be investing 160 million in the country, Mr. Laurie Derblanche, who's from the Thomas Group, looking to invest well over 120 million rand. Mr. Philip Mulungo from the Toronto Group. The company will be investing 130 million rand. Mr. Satya Das of Madison, who will be investing 120 million rand. Mr. Shiraj Deshpande of KLT, who will be investing 525 million rand. Mr. Ian Myberg of ZF Lemfuder, they will be investing 240 million rand. Mr. Damien Buet of Ferocia, who will be investing 250 million rand. Mr. Chris Eves from Atlantis Foundries, who will be investing 171 million rand in the country. Mrs. Kumbuzo Makozom from Sanral, who will be investing 23 billion rand. Mr. Fundiswa Sentebe from AXA, who will be investing 12.8 billion rand. Mr. Ranjendra Balkarum from Newland, who will be investing 3.1 billion rand. Mr. Tebogo Mogashwe, who will be from Atterbury Property Group, looking to invest 595 billion rand. Mr. Webster from the Limpopo Eco-Industrial Park, looking to invest 10 billion rand. Mr. Chris Ho from the Solar Group, investing 400 million rand. Mr. Norman Moyo of the EcoNet Energy Group, investing 210 million rand. Mr. Rosk Falk of the KwaZulu-Natal Cruise Terminals, investing 259 million rand. These are several companies, ladies and gentlemen, from various sectors, all being represented on stage. Please make your way forward for a photo opportunity with His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa. A myriad of sectors being represented, big numbers that are being quoted, and of course important companies and leaders who are committed to investing in South Africa. All of whom will gather in the center for a group photo opportunity. Unfortunately, given the time pressures, we don't have an opportunity for one-on-one interactions or speeches, so please do gather at the center for a group opportunity. Group photo with the President. May I ask that we break the line here and that you just go on to the back of the stage. does sound as though the President has made it his mandate to speak to all of the participants one-on-one, and I guess quite critical, especially given the sums of the capital that have been committed here today. To the representatives, though, from many institutions, from those who play in the infrastructure space, those who also play within the business environment regarding pharmaceuticals in South Africa, all making a key commitment. As you all have your opportunity to speak to the President, please make your way to the center of the stage, to the participants that are joining us, in order for us to gather for the photo opportunity and ensure that it's managed accordingly. Another company being represented here on stage is AfriGrow. Moshe Molefe, who's the executive chairman of the company within the agro-processing space, committing 6 billion rand to South Africa's economy in order to advance some of the commitments that have been made here today. In the meantime, given the numbers that have certainly been quoted, and of course capital commitments and investment made from very varied participants here in the room, I think we can certainly acknowledge that this has been yet another successful investment summit thus far, looking to build and reach that target of 1.2 trillion rand by the year 2030. On that note, we've got the Springboks that have won, we've got business leaders and members of the labor union who are keen and eager as participants, we've got government who will be expanding on opportunities to ease the flow of doing business in South Africa, more insight that we'll gain into in just a moment. I think, if anything, this deserves probably the best round of applause that we came prepared to deliver today. So can we deliver that round of applause in celebration and acknowledgement of the capital commitments that are being made by companies big and small in order to reach our targets? Ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you once more to all the companies that have committed capital, they've committed their time, and they've committed their patience to advancing South Africa's economy. Mr. President, we'd also like to thank you for your participation. You've certainly brought about new meaning to Tumamina. You've sent us, and there are many of us, and we are all committed and eager.